Before we get started, I'd like to remind you to hit that subscribe button. Right now, only 88.7% of my viewers are subscribed, and once we reach 1,000 subscribers, I'll release an exclusive special video just for you. The lake was a hidden gem, tucked away behind towering trees and untouched by the mess of suburban sprawl. When I first bought the property, I knew I'd stumbled onto something extraordinary, a private retreat where I could fish, unwind, and soak in the quiet sounds of nature. The best part? It was all mine, legally and rightfully. No public access, no shared ownership with the HOA, just me and my lake. But peace never lasts long when you live near a homeowners association, especially one run by someone like Linda. From the moment I settled in, the HOA board had been poking around, trying to flex their so-called authority. The lake, despite being completely within my property lines, became their fixation. Over the years, they tried every trick in the book, suggesting I donate it to the community, pushing for an easement, even claiming it had always belonged to the neighborhood. Every attempt crashed and burned because I had the deed, the records, and the surveys proving my ownership. But that didn't deter Linda. It only fueled her determination. Linda was the type who thought being HOA president made her the queen of the neighborhood. She was always out there, clipboard in hand, inspecting lawns, slapping fines on people for things like slightly chipped mailbox paint, and acting like the whole place was her personal empire. She had an opinion on everything, and unfortunately, my lake topped her list. At first, she played it cool, casually mentioning at HOA meetings that the lake would be perfect for neighborhood events. I shut it down every time. Then she ramped it up, sending passive-aggressive letters about how amenities, like the lake, should benefit everyone. I ignored her, but Linda wouldn't quit. One day, I caught strangers strolling along my shoreline. When I asked what they were doing, they said Linda had told HOA members they could use the lake as long as they were respectful. I was furious. I confronted her, and she brushed me off with a smug grin, claiming that since the lake had always been part of the neighborhood, in her mind, she was just restoring access. I reminded her I owned the property, that she had no right to invite people onto it, and that any more trespassing would mean legal action. She laughed it off, saying, "You're being so difficult. It's just water." Little did I know, she was only warming up. One Saturday morning, I stepped outside with my coffee and froze. My private property had turned into a full-on parking lot. Cars lined the grassy edge of my land, blocking the path to the lake. Kids splashed in the water while their parents lounged on my dock like they owned it. Someone had even set up a barbecue on my property. I stormed over, demanding to know what was happening. A guy flipping burgers glanced at me like I was the intruder. "Linda said we could use the lake today for the HOA summer kickoff," he said. "It's a community space, right?" I saw red. I spotted Linda in the middle of it all, sipping lemonade like some gracious ruler blessing her subjects with a day of fun. When she saw me, she didn't look concerned. She looked annoyed, like I was spoiling her party. "You can't just let people use my land," I snapped. "Oh, calm down," she said, waving me off. "This is what neighbors do, share. It's not like you use the lake all the time." That was it. That was the moment I knew Linda had crossed the line. I'd been patient, reasonable even, but this was blatant trespassing. If she wanted to play dirty, I was ready to fight back. She'd turned my property into a parking lot? Fine. She was about to learn what happens when you illegally park on private land. I took a deep breath, went back inside, and grabbed my phone. If Linda wanted to treat my property like a public park, she'd get a pricey wake-up call. I called a local towing company and calmly explained the situation. "How many cars?" the dispatcher asked. I stepped onto my porch, eyeing the mess of vehicles cluttering my land. "At least 15, I said. "Maybe more." The dispatcher whistled. "That's a big job, but if they're on your property without permission, we'll handle it." Perfect. I sat on my porch, watching people laugh, grill food, and splash in my lake, completely clueless about what was coming. I even set up my security cameras to record everything, knowing Linda would try to twist this into some sob story where she was the victim. 15 minutes later, the first tow truck rolled in, followed by another, then another. One by one, the trucks pulled into my driveway, their hazard lights flashing. The driver stepped out, checked my deed to confirm I owned the land, and got to work. They moved fast, hooking up cars and hauling them off before anyone noticed. The first few vanished quietly. Then a woman with a margarita in hand turned, saw her SUV being lifted, and screamed. That's when chaos erupted. People dropped their drinks, jumped from their lawn chairs, and raced toward the tow trucks in a panic. The burger guy ditched his grill, arms flailing as he tried to stop his minivan from being towed. A woman in a sun hat shrieked, "Wait, wait, that's my car." The driver didn't flinch. "Ma'am, your vehicle's illegally parked on private property. You can pick it up at the impound lot." More shouting, more mayhem. Linda charged toward me, fuming. "You're towing people?" she screeched. "Sure am," I said, sipping my coffee. "They're parked on my land." "This is insane," she yelled. "You can't just—" I cut her off. "Actually, I can. It's my property. And since you told everyone they could park here, I hope you're ready to help them pay the towing fees." Her face went pale. More trucks arrived, clearing out the cars while HOA members scrambled to save their vehicles. Some made it in time, peeling out in a frenzy. Others weren't so lucky. Then Linda made her next mistake. She called the cops. I stood there, arms crossed, chuckling as she frantically told the dispatcher I was illegally towing people from my own land. This woman was unreal. When the police arrived, the scene was pure madness. People argued with tow truck drivers, a few demanded their cars back on the spot, and Linda was in full meltdown, waving her phone around like a lunatic. The officer sighed, looked at me, and asked, "Sir, do you own this property?" "Yep." "Are these vehicles trespassing?" "Yep." He turned to Linda. "Ma'am, this is private property. He has every legal right to remove unauthorized vehicles." Linda's mouth flapped open and shut like a fish out of water. But the HOA has always." The officer stopped her. "This has nothing to do with the HOA. It's his land. You and your members have no legal right to be here." That's when the tide turned. People weren't mad at me anymore. They were mad at Linda. "You told us we could park here," one guy snapped. "I just paid $300 to get my car back," another woman shouted. Linda stammered, trying to weasel out of it, but the HOA members weren't buying it. They realized they'd been misled, and now they were paying for it, literally. It got worse for Linda when an officer asked, "Ma'am, did you organize this event?" "Well, because that means you're responsible for misleading these people onto private property." I swear I saw the moment she knew she was done. The cops didn't arrest her, but they took a report, and Linda had to face every furious HOA member and explain why their cars were gone. It was glorious. The best part? As people stormed off, someone muttered, "I'm filing a complaint with the HOA board." She's got to go. Linda's reign was crumbling, and I had a front row seat. The fallout from the Great Lake towing debacle was incredible. The next day, Linda went into damage control mode, trying to pin it all on me. She sent a mass email to the HOA, painting herself as the victim and claiming I'd overreacted to a friendly neighborhood gathering. She called my actions aggressive and hostile to community unity. But her story didn't hold water. The people who'd been towed were livid. Many had shelled out hundreds to retrieve their cars, and they weren't letting it go. Within hours, replies flooded the HOA message board. "Linda, you told us we could park there. Why didn't you check first? I'm out $350 because you lied. This is unacceptable. You need to fix this." Her attempt to spin the narrative blew up in her face. And just when she thought it couldn't get worse, she got an official legal notice from my lawyer. I decided to go on the offensive. My attorney sent a cease and desist letter, laying out the property laws, detailing the trespassing incidents, and warning that any further attempts to claim my lake would lead to a lawsuit. I sent a copy to the HOA board too, just for good measure. The board already wasn't fond of Linda. She'd annoyed plenty of people with her power trips over the years. But now she'd cost dozens of members real money and nearly dragged the HOA into legal trouble. At the next HOA meeting, it all came crashing down. Linda tried to take charge, brushing off complaints and calling it a misunderstanding, but people weren't having it. One homeowner stood up and demanded her removal, saying she'd misled the neighborhood and put them at risk. Another demanded to see the HOA's financial records, suspecting Linda had used funds to print fake lake access flyers she'd handed out earlier. The board scrambled to distance themselves, insisting the HOA wasn't involved in her stunt and that she'd acted alone. Within an hour, a vote was called, and Linda was ousted as president. It was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. With Linda gone, things shifted fast. The HOA board sent me a formal apology, though I didn't care, and several residents reached out personally to say the same. A few admitted they'd followed Linda's lead without questioning her claims about the lake. But I wasn't taking any chances on a repeat. The next week, I upgraded my property. I installed taller fences with security cameras at every entrance, slapped up bold, "No trespassing" signs with clear warnings about prosecution, and added motion sensor lights to the dock area. If anyone tried sneaking in for a late-night swim, they'd light up like a Christmas tree. Since then, not a single HOA member has dared come near my lake. The funniest part? A few weeks later, I ran into one of Linda's old HOA cronies at the grocery store. He awkwardly told me she'd sold her house and moved away after losing her position. Apparently, she couldn't handle the shame of being dethroned. Good riddance. Now, as I sit by my peaceful, empty lake, no Linda, no trespassers, no chaos, I can't help but laugh. Maybe next time, instead of towing their cars, I'll just charge them $500 a visit.